Okay, look, it's just over here. So I think now's a good time to go. Let's do it.
No, not yet.
No.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, no.
Yeah, let's do it.
So has anyone heard of Robert Wedderburn before? No? Haven't. I hadn't heard of him either. It was about a year and a half ago was the first time I heard about him. And I was asked to go and meet this guy called Stuart Butler. And he said, I want you to do this play. And I was like, do this play? I'm retired, I don't do theatre anymore. And he said, well, have a look at this. And so I took the book home and I started to read it, and I was like, how comes I don't know about this? How comes I don't know about a person of mixed heritage who was a political activist in London in the 1800s? So I read a little bit more, and it started to make me think that I almost had a responsibility to pull my old body, crumbled, arthritic, stiff body back into performance again. So reluctantly, I started to look at it and think, how could I do this with theatre and dance without injuring myself? And I was very lucky to come across Mary Lou, and she was a dancer, mature dancer of myself. And we decided, let's do this. And we put a performance on in Stroud. I thought one little performance, and that's it, we're done. We've done our little bit. But it went quite well. And we're like, okay, looks like there's a stage 2 to happen. We did this out of our passion. We thought, we need to get paid. I thought, well, we're going to get paid. She says, well, I'll do the funding. I said, what, those forms that you open up, like 500 pages long? And she goes, yeah, we can do that. And I was like, well, you take care of that. I'm going to go and cry in the corner, because even the thought of it just makes me depressed. And so she did that, and we got the money. And we're like, okay, let's go, let's do this. It was exciting. We're going to do something that contributes to the stories of untold Black history. And COVID came in. And we're like, okay, that's that then. So everybody's reinventing themselves. And so that means, okay, what we'll do is we'll do it digitally, and then we'll have a live performance afterwards. We just have to adapt to the situation. And what I find interesting about the COVID also is I got a cold during this place, but I didn't know. I had a cough, I had a fever, I was sweating, and I went for one of those COVID tests where they kind of put that thing in your mouth and it makes you gag. And I came back and it was negative. It was the first time I found negative so positive. But it's also the horrible feeling was with the pandemic is that if I was sick, then everybody else that we've been wearing masks and all sorts of stuff, but everyone would have to stay at home, and suddenly there's this responsibility. So this pandemic is changing our art expression, changing our life, but also there's other things coming up, like Black Lives Matter came up during this period, where there was a global consciousness that different lives don't have the same equal outlook on. And that, I believe, comes from the stories that are shared today, that are still held from the past. And to put something like Robert Wedderburn's story into this collage of history would be a good thing to do, I think. So that's what we did, is we started to put it together. We brought in Louise, we brought in Chioma, so we had music to hold the story as well, which was very exciting. And you're going to see that later on, so yeah, keep watching. Don't like pause or anything, just keep hanging in there. And then it's just to look at what it meant in the 1800s to fight for these rights that we didn't know about, and what that meant for the struggles that we now enjoy today. And that's what I was wondering. I don't know about him, but in the future, I was thinking if we did digitalize everything, all the books disappeared, and we would just link to some kind of robot, and we could just teleport, or not teleport, like telepathically. That's not the word, but you know what I mean. We're thinking without thinking across each other. And then one day somebody pulls the plug and they go, oh yeah, by the way, do you know that performance in 2020, there were no Black people in there? And you're like, no, yeah, there were. No, there wasn't. Show me the evidence. There wasn't. Yeah, but the plug's been pulled, hasn't it? So there's no evidence, isn't there? There were no Black people. Only white people were performing in that performance. We would think that would be a bit strange. And I think that's exactly what's happened. Although I'm kind of hamming it up a bit, that's kind of what's happened. In the World War II, and there were Caribbean, African, Asian shows in World War I. We've only recently started to talk about that. So this is our contribution to those untold stories. And hopefully, we will start to share more of these as time goes on. Robert Wedderburn came into this world through rape. His father was a plantation owner in Jamaica, and his mother was born in Africa before her enslavement. His father sold his mother off before he was born, and then again after his birth.
I was brought up by my mother's mother talking Amy. But Jesus didn't protect her. As I saw her flogged almost to death in front of my eyes. I was barely 11 years old.
She had to be punished. Her spells were too strong. She was jealous of my liberty. The death of my only child was my punishment for her injustice.
Talking Amy said she would forgive her but never forget her beating. And she helped to bury her child. Jamaica was not safe. I was free, but I felt scared within. I joined the British Navy at the age of 17. After serving the king faithfully against the wars against the French and the Spanish, my loyalty began to wane as I was inspired by the mutiny of the North, where Stalians fighting for their basic human rights, for their service and sacrifice at sea. There was power in numbers against the powerful, and change was evidenced. After serving the king, London became my home. Money was never in abundance, but I managed to get a few small contracts working as a tailor and selling my political pamphlets and charging an entrance fee for my popular preaching. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me and my missus to get by. My fight for freedom was met by the Methodist Church because they believed all were equal in the eyes of God. But their willingness to petition and work within this political system did not fit my opposition to the church hierarchy. I learned to preach from the Unitarian voice, which meant I could challenge the aristocracy. And Tom Spence matched my ideology for freeing the slaves and equality for women and children. His philosophy helped fuel my unrelenting vision for revolution. He could not talk with oppressors. They were always oppressed. They will abuse you, crush you, murder you, arm and revolt. The rich have always despised the working class. Every working man should use the cutlass, the dagger, and the pistol. It is our only way to freedom.
My dear Miss Campbell, when I heard of your kindness towards my aged mother, it filled me with such excitement. And when it was described how, for our brother John, you went to that hand for our brother John. Yes. And how I was struck with wonder and astonishment when John, our brother, described how you went to the drawer and took out his paper and said, "Here, John, take your freedom." Your actions fill me with inspiration. And yes, the slave shall be free. My dear Miss Campbell, my dear sister, you still share part blood of the Maroons who fought for 20 years against the Christians. The English wanted to reduce them back to slavery after they escaped to the Jamaican woods from the Spaniards. The Christians reckoned that... Reckon, is that with a C or a K?
A CK.
Sorry, what?
It's both.
It's both.
RECKON.
RECOK. Oh, could you just spell it for me?
Yeah. R.
Yeah.
E.
Yeah.
C.
Yeah.
K.
Yes.
O. N.
Okay, yeah, got it, thank you.
That's right.
The Christians reckoned they were worth £5 per head for each pair of ears. But the Maroons were not barbarians because this was proven by a bold flag of truth between them and the Spaniards. Oh, not the Spaniards. I made the Spaniards in the... Sorry, let me rewrite this bit again. It's not the Spaniards. They made a bold flag of truth. So we need the plucking. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, it's more exciting while I'm writing. It's the emotion I feel from it. Okay. They reckon they were worth £5 per head for each pair of ears. But the Maroons were not barbarians, and this was proven by the bold flag of truth between them and the Britons. My dear sister, although you still hold slaves, do not be afraid or alarmed, because they must be let free. I inform you for your present safety and also for the good of your future offspring. You must let the slaves go immediately, because in their prison house a voice can be heard. Let the slaves have their freedom.
Dearest brother, by letting my slaves free and giving them the land as agreeable by the Spencean Trust, I have cast myself into terrible trouble. Because when I went to register the deed with the governor's secretary, he said he had never heard of such a doctrine. I was sent before the governor.
My dear, have you taken leave of your senses to set your slaves free and give them the land? Such an idea never entered the mind of anyone that ever existed who held the land as private property. And human beings are slaves. Therefore, you must be in a state of delusion.
I am not delusional. My brother told me to do it. And since I have done it, I have felt my whole heart enlarged for the human race. I can now hold the first and second commandments with joy in my heart, because I now do indeed love my neighbour as I do myself.
Hold your tongue, Miss Campbell. You have been listening to the Methodists.
I say God bless the Methodists. The Methodists teach us to read the Bible, where it is written that the slave that would deny his freedom at the end of his second nature, but he must have his ears cut off. Or he must have loved his master and his mistress more than the law of liberty itself.
Well, child, I will hear from you at a more convenient time. But in the meanwhile, keep your slaves upon your own estate, for fear they should corrupt others and turn their brains to think that liberty and possession of the soil is better than slavery and whip. There is a law made by the assembly to hang a slave. Slaves have been hung for preaching and teaching. Another has been hung for throwing up his hoe and blessing the name of King George. The slave had mistaken the abolition of slavery for the slave trade, for the abolition of slavery. So again, keep your free slaves on your land only.
So, my sister helped change beliefs by challenging beliefs. But beliefs can also splinter groups. And I had to leave the Spenceans, the soft-thinking Spenceans, because they didn't have the guts to really go into revolution. So I left with my followers and my bench. My bench, not their bench. They can go and get their own benches. This bench belonged to me for my followers to sit down so we could plan for the future of our revolution.
Good evening. Welcome to Hopkins Chapel. It's so good that you are here, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this evening with you with my husband, Robert Wedderburn. Oh, hello, wonderful. Would like to come in? Wonderful. That's it. Do you have a mask? Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'm exempt from wearing a mask. Wonderful. So there's a few more people joining us now. So that's it. If you wouldn't mind not bunching up, I'd really appreciate it. I did say, I don't want to be rude, but do you mind not bunching up because it's my name on the risk assessment? And thank you. Yes, thank you. Lovely. So that's it. If you could just move your chairs a bit further apart. And at the back, if you'd like to stay 2 meters apart, that would be,
Yeah, we've got to be safe. Got to be safe.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure everyone comes here is safe.
Yeah, comes in safe. So you're all in now, wonderful. So let's commence and enjoy.
As the thirst of gold takes hold, he gains the courage to be more bold, and strips all dignity of the other, rips the child from his mother, chain the arms and legs and neck, throws the unwanted over deck. As the economics no longer make sense, a callous mindset calculates the expense, black bodies beaten and put to auction for the white man's desperate need for fortune. Human flesh becomes a commodity. It is no longer regarded as an oddity. As blood is spilled and freedom castrated, minds are crushed, motivation sedated, trembling, naked, wounded, sighing, bodies squashed. Some are dying. A land is lost. A hope runs thin. Abuse is subject to the colour of my skin. Will the master acknowledge this human disaster? Will he listen to the spiritual pastor? Look at all the blood that stains. Free your soul from your internal chains. Let go of the grip of selfish need in order for your spirit to succeed. Drop your thoughts, you pathetic weasel. Why not embrace mankind? Because all are equal. You may feel the fear and be a wee bit frightened, but with this freedom, you will become enlightened. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Thank you. Now today, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk to you about contradictions. That's right. Let's talk about the good book and contradictions. Because at one point it says one thing, and another it says another. So let's take, for example, Jesus Christ said that no man has ever seen God. But then Moses goes around and sees him in every bush. Jesus Christ says, no man has ever conversed with God, yet Moses goes around and talking with him all over the place. So, which one is telling the truth? Because one of them has to be a liar. I mean, let's talk about it. Acknowledge no king, no priest, no father. That's the kind of information we want in our heads. I mean, let's talk about the story of Balaam. I'll talk to you about the story of Balaam. Just an example of a little bit of a context. So you've got Balaam. He's on his donkey. He's riding along. And he's just been told that he has to go and put a spell on the promised people. Okay, so he's going along, clippity, 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 clop, clippity, 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 clop, clippity, and he's got all this gold that's been given to him. And he's like, oh, I love my gold, I love my gold. And he was so focused on the gold, he didn't see a huge angel. I be a huge angel, and with a huge store. Not a store, because that would be somewhere he would buy something. He's already eaten. So he came back and he bought himself a sword. He's got a huge sword. And he says, beware, I shall slice you into cheese bits.
They probably didn't have milk at that time, but I just used that because it just came to me as an inspiration. So he's on his donkey and he's riding around, and he doesn't see the angel because he's so focused on the money. But the donkey does, and the donkey's saying, okay, no, there's him without the dog because that would be blasphemous. So he's probably saying like, oh no, he's going along, and he sees the angel, and he says, let's get off this path. And he goes across the path, but stumbles a bit, and hits Balaam into a wall. Bam! Balaam's leg is killing him. He's like, get off, you stupid ass! Get off me! So is he an ass or a donkey? He's more likely to be an ass in that time. So he's in here, he comes off, and he goes, I'm going to kick your ass. Kicks the donkey's ass, and he starts punching the donkey. And he's just like knocking the donkey out. And the donkey's like, oh, please, why? And he can't speak, he wants to speak. And God says, I shall give you voice. And the donkey goes, ha! No, please, why are you hurting me? Have I not always treated you fairly? Yes, you have, but I'm being really irritated. But there was an angel who was going to slice you in two. I was going to slice you in two. And Balaam looks up, and he sees the angel, and he says, nice one, donkey, thank you. And donkey says, no worries. No, what's going on here? Has God now got to the ass and started speaking for an ass? What a load of baloney. Jesus Christ said, acknowledge no king, no priest, no father, but that has never been practiced. And it's all because of Paul the Apostle. He taught very differently. He did, didn't he? He taught, pay your money, pay Caesar. But why did he do that? Why did he say that? Because he knew that if he went around making people pay their taxes, he could preach what and where he wanted without fear of spies like are in the room here today. The thing I find is that Christianity really hasn't been practiced in this world today. And that's because of a stupid fellow, Paul the Apostle, who influences our Christian beliefs and keeps our Christian masters in power. And that's why we have to dig down and find the courage like Christ, so we can gain our own equal rights in the face of God. Acknowledge no king, no priest, no father. Acknowledge no king, no priest, no father. Acknowledge no king, no priest, no father. I stand before this court in the charge of blasphemy. I just wanted to say to the members of the court that I can't afford legal service, so I'll be representing myself. 200 years ago, people were put to death for not believing in the Trinity, but today our King lets us deny the Trinity and also preach different doctrines without fear. So, my people were humble people. They didn't understand fine spun discourse. So does that mean that I'm to be convicted for speaking with a vulgar tongue? It seems to be a conspiracy to keep the poor in superstition and ignorance. If there is anybody here who is a sincere friend of religious, if there anyone is here, and I'll say this clearly, is a true friend of religious liberty, then I will be acquitted. But if this hearing is in the spirit of bigotry and religious persecution, then I will take the satisfaction to suffer like Christ, and suffer on the cross, well, at least metaphorically on the cross, as I suffer for a deeper truth. Well, that didn't go very well. Didn't get everything I wanted to say out and didn't really buy it. So, yeah, I was sent to prison. Small little place. Really damp.
dark.
I was thinking about Elizabeth Wedderburn, and I know really very, very little about her, and I wonder who she might have been. Women at that time, well, people didn't write about women at that time, and that was how it was. So when I think about Elizabeth, and I think about what it must have been like for her to be married to someone like Robert Wedderburn, I mean, I'm sure he was quite a pain in the arse at times. And I think her life must have been just tough, really tough at times. And off he went to prison, and there she was, left with the kids at home, and struggling with poverty, and all sorts. And it must have been, well, I can't even begin to imagine how frustrated she must have been with the aristocracy that imprisoned her husband at that time. I mean, if someone had imprisoned my husband, Steve, for speaking his truth, oh well, I'd be really pissed off about that. And I'm sure she was. And I know, or I don't, well, there's evidence, let's say there's evidence to prove that somebody wrote a letter for Elizabeth to the Lord Chief Justice, and she would have had to convey herself in a polite manner that would have been, I think, contradictory to their beliefs, but she would have had to suck up. And I think that she would have been feeling anything but polite. She may have had feelings of anger, and I think feelings of frustration, and hatred, and sadness, and loneliness. And despair. My dear Lord Chief Justice, I write to you in the hope that Mr. Wedderburn be moved closer to his family. To send a rich man to jail is no greater punishment as to send a poor man. When a rich man is imprisoned, he may have every luxury. When a poor man is imprisoned, it ought to be where his friends and family can reach him. Had you sent Mr. Wedderburn to Newgate, he would have been allowed a small portion of meat as allocated by the prison allowance, instead of his poor family having to divide their meals to support him. To send a man to a distant jail 150 miles away from his poor distressed family, it is double the punishment to him as it is to any other man. Mr. Wedderburn is a journeyman tailor, verging on 60. I am poor. I cannot render his assistance. I know and hear you are the most humane of judges. Please, I ask your mercy in sending my husband closer to his family. I am your most obedient servant, Elizabeth Wedderburn.
William Wilberforce encouraged me to finish my story. He suggested that I focus my energy on freeing slaves and less on the injustices of religion. But I continue to fight all injustice. Spending years secluded in this prison. It's given me time to reflect on the religious structure and also to look at outdated dogmas. I felt great satisfaction thinking about the arts and the science and the wonderful progress it's done for us. We've got to remind ourselves that the arts and science continue to develop on the achievements of the past, either breaking them down or building upon them. We've got to think about the arts and the sciences and how their progression over time has really influenced the ways that things are done. I mean, for example, we look at cast iron, the pipes. They conduct water and gas light to our homes. The bridges, they enable us to cross the widest rivers. It forms the structure and the bonds of our homes, and also, if we think about it, from one sense it's for accessories, in another it's for strength, and in a third it's for both. But I don't want to keep on about this because it just makes my head go a bit dizzy when I try to put all these things together. But really what I want to say is that I want to take all the credit for myself, because it was also the inspiration behind my proposal came from a woman selling apples. So what I did is, as I was walking down the street, I came across this worn-down church. And I went to the clergy and I said, excuse me, this worn-down church, when you rebuild it, are you going to make it out of wood or stone?
Oh no. No. It's going to be made out of cast iron. What? Wow.
Next you'll be making a parcel out of cast iron.
A parcel out of cast iron. That was the idea. That was the idea I was waiting for. And if we think about it, the clergy of the so-called legitimate church has become so mechanical that maybe one day we could replace him with a cast iron castle. And if he was replaced, that means religion wouldn't go into disrespect, because the lies from the clergy, they wouldn't happen, because a cast iron parson can't party. So they can't get disgraced for sexual misconduct or adultery, drunkenness, gambling. And even if you want, at the end of every service, you could say, fear God, honour your king and pay your taxes. So there was no revolution. Yeah, there wasn't much wrote about me after this period. A few little meetings I went to, they acknowledged. I was also taken to court for running a brothel. Didn't do it. Oh, well, they said the women needed support, I needed support. It wasn't a brothel. Oh, sorry. Yeah, kind of run out of money. Never really had it in the first place, so I ended up going to Corpus Graver. Just got to let them finish off with this one. A bit disrespectful. So. Well, I suppose there was this free slave act in 1833, which was good. And then there's the charter movement.
But excuse me, but do you want to get a move on? There's a queue back here.
I'm sorry, I was just, I'll finish up. I won't be. So yeah, no revolution, but I suppose reform over time. It's a little bit squashed in here.